And we're now on Daf Dalid Omid Beis. The Gemara answers Hachikam. This is the way we should interpret the intention of the Bryce. V'chein Misha Pirsa Ishto Nida Vilo Ba. You have to add those two words, as opposed to the case of the Chassan who's an Ovel even after the Ilu, where there's an Isa Yichud. But in the case of Pirsa Ishto Nida Vilo Ba, then Hu Yashin Ben Anosh V'Yishen Ben Anosh, then we have an Isa Yichud. So the word v'chein now is being reinterpreted. What the Bryce has in mind in v'chein is not the way you thought it was, that these are two equal halachos, the ratio of chasan avil and the seifa of pirsish nida, that are equal to the T in every sense. They're only equal in the v'chein as far as the Isa Yichud is concerned, but under different details and different criterion. In the case of a chasan, he has an Isa Yichud even if Kfar Baal. But in the case of Nida, there's no Isa Yichud if Kfar Baal. Now, the bottom line of this sugya is that they were machmer, the Chacham were machmer in the Isa Abelus more than in the Isa Nida. So that the Avel, who has an Isa of Be'ilah, in the Chassan Avel Reisha situation, because of Abelus, we're going to be more machmer, and we're going to impose upon him an Isa Yichud, even though he was Ba. And yet, when we come to Ishto Nida, which is certainly a more Chamer Dike Isa, we're talking about an Isa Kares, we're going to be more Mekil. And we're going to say once Baal, there's no Isa Yichud. That's counterintuitive. Shall we assume, therefore, that in the mind of a person, he takes Avelus a little bit more lightheaded? He takes an easy, lenient attitude towards Avelus, and therefore we have to be more machmir in Avelus. Whereas in Nida, we're going to be more Mekel because he realizes he's aware of the Chumash HaYisrael. And yet we're going to find that in Nida, Dafka, we're more Machmer. There are many Chumash in Nida. For example, there are many Malachas which normally a woman would do in the house, and she's not going to do it in a case of Nida. And yet, we're going to be more Mekel and Avelus. V'amar Rav Yitzchak bar Chanina amar Rav Huna kol malacha sheisha salabayla nido salabayla. We're Mekel, with the exception of three different malachos, to allow the Nida to do the regular malachos that she does in the house, which includes tochenes, ofa, mechabeses, mevasheles, menikas b'na. All this is going to be mutter. We're going to be lenient during Nidas. Chutz me, number one, mezigas hakos. She's not let her hand him yayin. That's a sort of intimacy. Vatzos hamita. She's not let her place the sheets on the bed. We'll have to see whether that's dafka b'fanav, is he present or even shalom b'fanav. And achutz is part of yadav varad. She pours the water for his washing into a basin that he can wash his hands, his feet, and his face. So those are the malacha shel chiba that have an intimacy and a romantic element to it. Those were prohibited during nidus in order to avoid an aver. But v'ilu gabi avelis tanya afal bichamu ein adam rashay lachuf es ishto lios kocheles v'lios pokeses ve'emes amru mozeges lo kos matzas lo mita u'rachetzes lo panav yodav v'ragel. So those very three malachos shel chiba, which were prohibited during nidus, are permitted during avelus. So we see that he takes avelus very seriously, and he's not going to come to violate the Isur Tashmish Hamita of avelus by virtue of the fact that she's doing all these romantic things for him. But in the case of Nida, on the contrary, by contrast, we're going to be more machmer. We're not going to allow these malachas shel chiba because we're afraid it might lead to an avera. So during Avelus, he cannot force his wife to, if he's an Avel, to Prava Avelus like he is. And she's allowed to do the malachos, even those which are called malecha shel chiba. And if, let's say, for example, she is an avela because she lost one of her relatives, he cannot force her to beautify her cosmetically her body for him, for his benefit, because she's an avelus. He has to respect the fact that she's an avelus, and she can be pokeses and kocheles. Like kocheles is what we call eyeshadow, and pokeses is some sort of a rouge. And she's not allowed to do that during avelus, and he cannot force her to violate those isurim for the sake of her beauty because she's an avelus. But on the other hand, even during her avelus, she's allowed to do the malacha shel chiba. So we see we're more mekel in avelus. And that's the exact opposite of what we learned here, that in the comparison between avelus and nida, we would dafka more machmer in avelus than we are in nida. Here we see that as far as malacha shel chiba, we're more machmer in nida than we are in avelus. So what's the right direction here to take? Lo kasha. Kan ba'avelus didei v'kan avelus dida. Who is in avelus? In a brisa that says that is an isa yichud, she's in avelus. I'm sorry. In a brisa that says that he's not allowed to have yichud with his wife, that's avelus didei. Sorry, I missed that yud. Didei. It means the Baal himself is an oven. And here the Rabbanan are afraid that his Yetzirah will get the best of him, and he'll come to do an Avera. And we were more machmer, we prohibited you. But Khan, in the statement of Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Huna, and we said during Avelus, she's allowed to pour his wine, etc., etc. That's Avelus Dida. She's an Avelus. She lost one of her close relatives. And here we have less of a chash that it could lead to some sort of a violation of the Yisra Avelus. So in the case of Avelus Dida, and again, we're assuming that they were already Makayim at the Mitzvah Bila at least once, the Rabbanan not Choshesh that he'll have a relationship with her. She will not listen to him. She's makpid on the kavod of her father or mother who died and on the laws of Avelus. So now the Gemara asks the following kasha: how is it possible to interpret that the Isa Yichud that we learned in the Brisa is only in a case where he's an Avel, but not she? Veha, take a look at the language of the Brisa. It says, Meis Aviv Shel Chasano Ima Shel Kala. Ima Shel Kala means, by definition, that she, the Kala, is in Avelus of the loss of her mother. So the Gemara answers, Ki Ketani, when it says in the Brisa, Ima Shel Kala, Ashara, and all the other dinim that are enumerated in the Brisa, namely Machnisin Sames Lecheder, Sachasan Lekal Chupa. But as far as the Isa Yichud is concerned, here, in the case of Ima Shel Kala, we have different dinim. Because then she's in Avelus. And there's no Isa Yichud. So the part of the Brisa that says, Hu Yoshem Ben Anoshim, He Ben Anoshim, does not apply in the case of Meis Ima Shel Kala. So Gemara asks, Umi Shani, is there really a difference between Avelus Didei Avelus Didava? Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Misha Meis Chamav, or Chamosa. Either his wife's father died or his wife's mother died. Eno Yachol Lachuf Es Ishto, Leos kocheles for Leos pokeses. The brisa is clearly addressing a case where she's an avelus and she's not allowed to be miskashet. She can't beautify herself and puts herself with all sorts of tachshitim during her avelus. That was enjoined. He can't force her to violate that isur. Ella, but rather, he also has to be knowing a little bit of minhag avelus together with his wife. And how does that minimum niyug avelus imposed upon the husband because his wife expressed itself? Kofe mitasa. He has to sleep on an overturned bed. The noigima avelus. He shemes chamea o chamosa. Her father-in-law or mother-in-law died. Enerachshal lios kocheles lios pokeses ela kofe mitasa v'noheges ima avelus. The wife of a man who lost a parent, meaning her husband is now an avelus, she too has to participate to some extent a mixas niyug avelus that expresses itself in an isur of tachshitim and the requirement of kfiyas hamita. So she is now participating in his avelus. And we see clearly that even though it's his avelus, he's allowed to have yichud, because the Brisa says, within the context of the dini avelus of a balan and isha, it doesn't differentiate at all between his avelus and her avelus, as far as yichud is concerned. So it means that even if he's in avelus, there's a heter yichud imishta. So how could you postulate that there's a difference between his avelus and hers? The Gemara answers, Tni, we have to add something to the Brisa. Be'avelus the day, if he's an avel, then there's an isu yichud. But that's only in the case where it's his avelus, not in the case where it's her avelus. The Gemara now asks the following kasha. How can you possibly add something to the Brisa and differentiate between his avelus and her avelus? Havechein kitani. The word vechein indicates when it says vechein he mesa shemesa chamia o chamosa, that the din of her avelus is equal to the din of his avelus. And the Gemara answers ki kitani. When it says the word vechein, it's not relating to the Isur Yichud, but rather akichul v'apirkus. It's just like when she's an avelus, he has an Isur of tachshitim, and he can't force her to violate that. So too, at the time of his avelus, she has to participate in it as avelus and withstand and avoid tachshitim. However, as far as yichud is concerned, there's a fundamental difference, as we saw the Gemara insist, between his avelus and her avelus. So the Gemara asks the following question: how can you add to the Brisa that in his avelus is an isur yichud? For imo ketani, the Brisa says no heges imo avelus. My love, what does imo mean? Imo b'mita. As far as yichud is concerned, there's a heter yichud. So again, to add to the brisa that during his avelus there's an isur yichud, what are you going to do with the word imo? And your answer is lo. Imo doesn't mean imo b'mita, but rather imo b'bayit. So kamashmal, what's the chiddush? Amalei Rav Lechia Berei. He instructs his son Rab Chia the son of Reb Chia, in a case where the father-in-law of Reb Chia died, the Apa Nahog Avelusa. In her presence, you should be knowing Minig Avelus. The Lo Biapa, but if she's not around, Lo Tinag Avelusa. You don't have to participate in her Isurei Avel. It's Shalo B'fanel. So the din of Avelus, Abalim Ishta Va'isha Im Baila, that's only because of the covet of the Avel. And covet of the Avel is only in front of the Avel, in his presence, or her presence. And that's what the Brisa means when it says no Heges Imo, which we interpret it to mean Imo Babayis. So it means Dafka, if she is there with him, she has to be knowing in his presence, Nihuge Avelus. But if she's not around, or shall I say she's not with him, she doesn't have to be knowing Nihuge Avelus. Okay. Now at this point, the Gemara is going to go back to the question that we asked on the top. And on one hand, it seems that the Isser Avelus is Kal B'Yenov. It will be more Machmir. Whereas the Isser Nida is Chomer B'Yenov and will be less Machmir. So in the case of Avelus, which is Kal B'Yenov, we're going to impose an Isser Yichud, even in the case of Karbah. But in Nida, the Isser Nida during Avelus applies to the Malacha Shel Chiba, that's Mezigas HaKos, for example, and they were matir during Avelus. Now, earlier, the Gemara had given an answer. If we go back to the previous answer, that we should be mechalik between Avelus Didei and Avelus Dida. Now the Gemara is offering a different answer. Rav Ashi Amar Ki Kamidamos Avelusa Dochla Avelusa Dialma. Me, do you have a right to make this analogy between the Avelus of a Chasan to the Avelus of someone who's not a Chasan? There's a fundamental difference. Avelusa Dialma, in a case of someone who's not a Chasan, Chamir. He understands it's Chumrah. Therefore, they allowed Mezikas HaKos. But Avelus Nahach, in the case of a Chasan, Asil Zilzule Be, why? Dafka Kevade Kilu Be Rabbana. There's a separate kula. The Gemara is going to now embark upon an investigation. What is that kula? But granted that there's a kula, therefore, Asil Zilzule Be. And therefore, if we're afraid that he might violate the Yisrael, the Rabban are going to slap it with a separate chumrah that they're not allowed to be mitzayached one with the other. So my kula, where do you find a kula in the Avelus of a Chasan? We thought that the Avelus of a Chasan matches up identically to Avelus the Alma. No. Elem, and perhaps you'll say the Ketani, Boil, Bilas, Mitzvah, Poresh. The fact that we allowed the Bilas Mitzvah to take place even before the Kvura. That's a great kula. So what happened over here? Before the Kvura, they allowed Bilas Mitzvah. So the Gemara says, Hasam, that's not a raya, that's not a kula. That's because Lo Chalev Avelus. He hasn't yet buried the dead before the Avelus. The Avelus is only engendered by the Kvura. Ila Rabbi Lazar, what does it mean? That the Avelus begins Sheyetzim Pesach Bayis, when the mess is taken out of the house on its way to burial. Ila Rabbi Yoshua, Achi Sasam Hagola, until Stimas Hagola. They buried the Aron with dust, with dirt. So when we put the mess into the cheder and we postpone the kfura, then everybody agrees lo chala dayin avelusol, and therefore there's a heter tashmish amita. That's not a kula. Can't say it's a kula if there wasn't the chalos avelus. Ella, but rather, what's the kula? The Ketani said in a brisa, the Rabbanu would make il shenoig shivas yivad mishte yakach noig shivis me'avelus. That we could postpone the days of simcha that we can be magdim the days of simcha and postpone the days of avelus. So the final bottom line in this sugi is that there's a special kula that we find in the chasen for avelus, in that they delayed the kfur in order to set up the Mea Mishta, and the Mea Mishta now adocha the Mea Avelus. That's a kula that we find in this avelus. It's avelus bechuya. It's not avelus bismana, following the death, and therefore he might be more tempted to be mekel in such avelus. See, we're dealing with the chassim as a big Talmud Chacham, the lamda, and we're afraid that as a result of the fact that it's kal b'einav, he may chas shalom come to violate the Isa avelus, and therefore we have to set up an Isa Yid. Omar Mar, we learned in the Brisa back on the Talmud Nominal, bein kach lo yivol lo bi erev Shabbos lo bi motzei Shabbos. Mishlem, I understand why it's also bi erev Shabbos. Mishum chabura. And again, the Gemara is going to go through a whole long discussion about whether it's a davar she'ein mitzkaven, a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. Elav motzei Shabbos, am I low? What's the problem of motzei Shabbos? Omar Abzera, here we turn to Daf Hey, Mishum Cheshbonos. That if they're going to have a Su'uda, a Chuppah and a Su'uda, right after Shabbos, then during the course of Shabbos, he's preoccupied with the finances. How is he going to finance this beautiful, elaborate Sudas Nisuin? And there's an Easter of Lachshov Cheshbonos on Shabbos. People don't know about this. You know, they just say in this stuff Shabbos Geret. Now Yeshaya Novi says v'chibada told me asos rachel mitzol chaftzcha v'dabru dava. Shaloye diburo shel. Shel Shabbos kediburo shel chol. Amalei Abaye says, what's your problem? So they'll make cheshbonos about the Suda and the Torchei Suda. Cheshbonos shel mitzvah miasiri. The Torah never prohibited cheshbonos shel mitzvah. But that's what we sing in the Zmiras, l'shadei chavonos. Of course, you know, it's about how much money you're going to pay the shadchanis or the shadchanis, but that's for the sake of a mitzvah, that you're allowed to do on Shabbos. Well, Lamdo Sefer, you can hire a Malamed, tell him exactly what you're going to pay him, what is his salary going to be, to teach his son Mikra. Sefer, Torah Shabbat. You're allowed to pay for Torah Shabbat. Now, the Gemara is going to enter into a question here about staka. Are you allowed to be posek sak pranim? Because Rav Chizra Rav Nunat Yamrit Travay Cheshbon Shel Mitzvah Mutal Chashvim B'Shabbos. What about psikas staka? So Mitzvah Hashem, that's where we'll stop for today. And tomorrow is what is Erev Shabbos Kodesh. And we'll pick it up with the issue of poskin stak laniyim b'Shabbos. So that's what we'll pick up Mitzvah Hashem tomorrow.